He is going to be a great player. We may look back in 5 or 6 years and say that Marvin Williams was the player out of this year's draft.
Marvin Gay Williams Jr., born June 19, 1986. As it relates to the NBA and basketball in general today, every draft in the early 2000s was really important. Those players shape what a lot of you know basketball to be currently and became this generation's idols, influence, and legends. This was the baggy jerseys, low-cut ankle socks with sneakers, 360 wave days, and later in the decade, the days that changed how we saw shooting and what point guards were able to do athletically. In 2003, 3 players entered the league that quickly became the new revered faces to be remembered. What Carmelo, D-Wade, and of course LeBron meant to this generation and last changed how players and positions are seen forever. They talk about positionless basketball and don't always give LeBron credit for being the best positionless basketball player there ever was. I have confidence that if you made LeBron play any position for an entire year, he'd excel. Dwayne Wade, in his earlier days, added to the bridge of great shooting guards. In fact, many believe behind Jordan and Kobe, there was none better. The deceptive first step, the Euro step, the athleticism, and clutch gene. A lot of the moves you see today, Dwayne Wade ushered those in. As far as isolation basketball, there's only 2 people I think of instantly when it's mentioned: Joe Johnson and Carmelo Anthony. Even the one-and-done college player going on to become a star in the league, Melo made that hot, and since him, there hasn't been a freshman better or more accomplished. In 2005, the NBA age rule was set to be in effect in a year, so this was the last time we've seen high school players in the draft. 2 of the most exciting point guards of the generation came into the league that year as well, and I still remember the battles they had even when they weren't playing each other as the best point guard in the NBA. Of the 2005 draft, only 2 players still remain active in Lou Williams and Chris Paul. I think it's safe to say Lou Williams is 1 foot out at the moment, while Chris Paul just went to the NBA Finals a few months ago and was one of the best players on the floor. But CP3 nor Lou Will were drafted number 1 in that draft, or even top 3. Chris was selected 4th and Lou the 45th pick. A player who was, though, was today's feature. I still remember Marvin Williams' lone season at North Carolina. It seemed like he dunked everything and on anyone. When they used the term high motor, that was Marvin Williams off the bench in college. But when he got to the NBA, things were a lot different. He retired in 2020, having never fully reached his expected potential, and here are 3 reasons why. Let's talk about it. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Let's get it, man. Marvin Williams was a 6'8" power forward, small forward from Bremerton, Washington, where he was a star for his local high school. As a junior in 2002-2003, he averaged 23.9 points and 14 rebounds and began to receive national notoriety. By the end of his senior year, there were questions of him going straight to the NBA. He averaged an insane rounded up 29 points and 16 rebounds that year and was selected to the McDonald's and Parade All-American rosters as well as Round Ball Classic. A 2-time All-State selection and Washington Player of the Year, Williams left high school as one of the more sought-after players in the country, but no one thought he was going to be one and done. Stunt number 1, leaving North Carolina too soon. It's difficult saying a guy left too soon for the NBA when said guy became a top 2 pick in the draft. But past being that, what other good did it do for Marvin to have been taken 2nd overall? And please don't say he got paid. We know he got paid. We know his 2nd year at North Carolina would have had to been legendary to be selected that high in the following draft, or would it? The 2006 draft was arguably one of the worst of all time. With an improved 2nd year, Marvin could have easily went number 1. But that's not the biggest point. Entering North Carolina, I don't even think Marvin believed he'd become a one-and-done player, and when he was relegated to coming off the bench all year, most certainly he couldn't have thought. But then the NBA started doing what it does every year, where draft experts lock in on one player and talk about him so much that he has no choice to be taken high in the draft off name recognition alone. The Kyra Lewises, Killian Hayes, Johnny Flynn's, and numerous others drafted way too soon off their name being chosen as the hot riser of the draft. Williams entered Carolina to a team already poised to win a championship, with Raymond Felton, McCants, and Sean May's class having went through the battles to get there, but just needed another push to get them over the edge. Marvin Williams was that off the bench. When he came into the game, everything turned up. He was bouncy, energetic, and had a high basketball IQ. The icing on the cake, though, was it seemed he had a highlight play every week with either a facial dunk or game winner. If best case scenario was a basketball player, his middle name would be Gay.
Not funny!
But Marvin wasn't ready. He came into the league without the advantages he had as an amateur, like size and athleticism, and also hadn't developed into a wing that could create for himself as yet, post up, and handle the ball more consistently. Another year on a North Carolina team whose best player following the year Williams left was a freshman would have done wonders for his game and confidence entering the NBA. Maybe even escape stunt number 2. Stunt number 2, being taken by the Hawks.
If you're looking at their roster right now with Josh Smith, Harrington, Childress, I think they will come to regret that they didn't take Chris Paul.
For some reason, you just knew when the Hawks drafted Marvin Williams this wasn't going to go right. That whoever made that decision was not good enough at their job, so it can't work. Unless you're Jay Billis, of course. Not because of Marvin, but because of the guys they passed on to take Marvin. You can't blame the player for a team thinking highly enough of him to take him where they see fit, and if it's the second highest paid position in the draft, then smile and take the picture. But what Atlanta did had to be one of the biggest misses of all time. Okay, you passed on Deron Williams, cool. Even though Deron went to the championship game where he had 17 points and 7 assists and was one of the more NBA-ready point guards. Speaking of point guards, that 05 Atlanta team desperately needed one. At the power forward, shooting guard, and small forward were the 3 leading scorers on the team. Tell me why again you needed a 6-man on a college team that just averaged 11 points in college at number 2. Just why? I think Atlanta still doesn't know they needed a point guard that year. Want to know the name of the starting point guard that upcoming season? This guy. Or some guy named Royal Ivy. When that didn't work, Joe Johnson or IQ god Josh Smith handled the point guard duties. They passed on the single guy that could have saved their franchise in Chris Paul, who would have been amazing with Joe Johnson and Josh Smith. But they were fooled by the hype guys like Jay Billis were spewing about Marvin Williams' athleticism and motor, none of which translated to the NBA, where he was an average player in those aspects. Stunt number 3, being selected too high. Another growth stunt for Marvin Williams, in my opinion, was where he was selected in the draft. A top 3 pick in the draft says a lot, not only about what the team that takes you think of you, but also the consensus of how teams view you at that point. Top 3 must mean you're really good, have loads of potential, or had an amazing journey up to that point, where you did more than enough to impress as an amateur or leagues you were in before. Either way, a lot of expectations come with that high of a selection, and you're viewed in a certain way when you don't meet them. Bust is usually the word thrown around. Was Marvin Williams a bust? Okay, before I answer that, let me ask you this. Was Kwame Brown a bust? To be consistent, we'd have to say yes, he was, based on his draft position and expectations that come with the team investing that much into you. Therefore, yes, Marvin Williams was a bust. He did have a solid career where he averaged 10 points and 5 rebounds. He also shot very well from 3 and the foul line, and he lasted 15 seasons. That's a solid career. But when you pass on a future Hall of Famer in Chris Paul, that was to me the obvious home run pick in the draft, especially for the Atlanta Hawks. To take a guy with the skills and production you could have gotten late first or even second round, it says a solid career was not something you hope for. Williams played 7 seasons with the Hawks, and in 2007-2008 was their third leading scorer at 14.8 points a game. Since then, his production dipped to around 10 points a game over his next 8 seasons, playing for multiple different teams. All in all, Marvin Williams still had a crazy NBA journey, and I'm sure is content with having basketball as his job for at least 15 years. He retired in 2020 and has plans to travel while working with children in the future, or an executive role with a former team, NBA, or college. Yes, he was taken too high and to the wrong team, and maybe before he was developed, but I'm sure he'd take that over most possible life outcomes. Salute to Marvin Williams, much respect, but for these reasons, his growth was stunted. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth, and I'm out.